Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a truly dramatic, fast-moving, and theologically complex war chronicle, 1 Kings chapter 20.
It really is.
For you, the listener who is intensely curious about how spiritual principles play out in real-world history, this chapter is a perfect case study.
Absolutely. A case study in tension and consequence.
And we have two main characters driving all the action. King Ahab, the notoriously wicked king of Israel, and then you have Ben-hadad, this overwhelming military power from Syria or Aram.
And what we see in this specific deep dive, especially following the incredible high drama of Elijah's confrontations, is, well, it's God refusing to abandon even the most undeserving person.
Yeah, that's what's so striking.
Ahab has resisted divine authority, consistently, yet God intervenes, not just once, but twice, and miraculously.
So our mission here is pretty clear. We are dissecting this detailed narrative verse by verse to really grasp the nature of that relentless, unsolicited grace shown toward Ahab.
Exactly. And we'll be looking at the cultural context of ancient Near Eastern warfare, analyzing the profound theological stakes, specifically this whole God of the hills versus the God of the valleys idea.
Which is fascinating.
And ultimately, we have to face the severe the substitutionary consequences that follow disobedience, even after God has delivered you in this miraculous way.
The stakes just couldn't be higher because this isn't just about Ahab's survival, is it?
Oh, not at all.
This is a battle for the reputation of Yahweh among the nations. The narrative makes God's purpose crystal clear, repeating that divine motive, that thou mayest know that I am the Lord.
Right. This entire sequence of events, from the siege to the rout, it's a demonstration. It's divine supremacy over human strength and pagan theology.
It's God making an undeniable, loud statement about his universal power.
That's the core of it.
So let's jump straight into the crisis. It's unfolding right there in verses 1 through 3. The threat is immediate, and it is overwhelming. We're introduced to Ben-hadad, the king of Syria, and he marshals a force so large it just signaled total regional dominance.
It wasn't just his own army either.
No, he brought a massive coalition backed by 32 kings with horses and chariots. What does that sheer number, 32 vassal kings, tell us about Aram's position right at this moment?
Well, if we look at the geopolitical landscape of the ancient Near East, that number signifies two things: absolute dominance and technological superiority.
Okay.
Ben-hadad wasn't merely the king of Damascus. He was the head of a massive confederation. Those 32 kings were local rulers who owed him allegiance, military tribute.
So they had to show up.
They had to show up, and to gather them all for a single siege of Samaria, which was the capital of the northern kingdom, built by Ahab's own father, Aram. It shows that Ben-hadad viewed Israel as either a critical target or, a ripe plum just waiting to be plucked.
And the mention of horses and chariots.
That suggests a massive advantage. Chariots were the ancient equivalent of heavy armored tanks. They required level ground and immense resources to field and maintain, which just confirms Aram's technological edge.
And the target is Samaria, Ahab's capital. Ben-hadad is so confident in this display of power that he doesn't even attack first. He uses psychological warfare.
Exactly. He sends messengers.
And his demands, outlined in verses 2 and 3, they weren't just for ransom. They were designed to secure total humiliation and vassalage without even drawing a sword. Silver, gold, wives, and the goodliest children. That is a truly brutal demand.
Oh, it's an economic, political, and cultural assault all at once.
How so?
The demands for silver and gold, that standard tribute, it establishes a financial vassalage. But demanding wives and the goodliest children, that goes so much deeper.
It's personal.
It's deeply personal. In this culture, seizing a king's wives and children, particularly the most promising heirs, is a direct, undeniable strike at Ahab's honor, his dynastic continuity, and the future of his entire household. It means total generational subjugation.
So Ben-hadad wasn't just asking for tribute.
No, he was demanding the permanent spiritual emasculation of the northern kingdom's ruling family.
And what's so telling is Ahab's immediate response in verse 4. He just capitulates instantly. My lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine and all that I have. He just folds.
He does.
When you see him face those overwhelming odds, what does this response reveal about his underlying character? Is this political pragmatism or is it just cowardice?
I think it reveals Ahab's consistent spiritual and emotional weakness. Ahab is a king who constantly prioritizes short-term survival and, political expediency over standing on any kind of conviction.
Or seeking God.
Or crucially seeking divine counsel. I mean, you have to remember, this is the man who just witnessed Elijah call fire down from heaven on Mount Carmel.
Right. He's seen ultimate power.
He's seen it firsthand, yet faced with a human army, his instinct isn't to ask, where's the God who just defeated the prophets of Baal? His instinct is self-preservation.
So he's thinking.
He's essentially thinking, just avoid the fight at any cost. Sacrifice everything personal for political peace. He confuses submission to God with submission to temporal power.
But history and this narrative constantly reminds us that appeasement only feeds tyranny.
It always does.
And this is where the narrative tension just dramatically heightens, starting in verse 5. Ben-hadad, seeing Ahab's submission, immediately escalates his demands.
Of course he does.
The envoy returns, stating that even though Ahab agreed to the initial tribute, Ben-hadad will now send his servants to search thine house and the houses of his officials to loot whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes.
And this is a critical psychological and political move by Ben-hadad. The shift from accepted, formalized tribute, which is humiliating, but it's structured to intrusive, randomized plunder, is total degradation.
The phrasing is so specific, whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes.
It signifies a complete disregard for boundaries and honor. They're moving beyond seizing state assets to seizing personal treasures, sentimental items, maybe specific heirlooms or religious artifacts.
Things that bring joy.
Things that are just valued by the Israelite people. This intrusion proves that Ben-hadad's original demands were just a test, and his true appetite is insatiable. He desires humiliation for humiliation's sake.
This excessive demand, this violation of the unwritten rules of vassalage, it finally pushes Ahab to seek counsel.
Finally.
In verse 7, he consults the elders of Israel. This is a rare moment of collective leadership for him.
Which tells you he knows this is different. He recognizes that this new demand threatens the entire nation, not just his own stuff.
Right. He lays out his case, saying Ben-hadad seeketh mischief.
This consultation is Ahab's first act of political maturity in the chapter, but it's driven by external pressure. He needed his people, specifically the elders, to confirm that he was justified in refusing.
He needed their backing.
Yes, and the elders, who represent the collective conscience and political will of the kingdom, they recognize that this demand crosses the boundary from vassalage to total annihilation. They advise unified resistance. Hearken not unto him, nor consent.
So this collective stand gives Ahab the spine he lacked on his own.
It does. It leads to a diplomatic refusal of the second demand in verse 9. It's a powerful lesson.
Yeah.
Even compromised leaders sometimes need the collective wisdom of their community to find the courage to draw a line in the sand.
So Ben-hadad hears the refusal, and his response in verse 10 is just total military arrogance.
Complete hubris.
He issues this fierce, terrifying oath, invoking his gods, vowing that Samaria will be utterly reduced to rubble. He boasts that his army is so numerous, there won't even be enough dust left in Samaria for his soldiers to each take a handful.
That's extreme hyperbole. It is hubris defined, trusting completely in his headcount and his superior technology. He's making a statement about his divine and military mandate.
And this kind of overwhelming pride is...
It's universally condemned in Scripture.
Yeah.
It echoes Proverbs 16.0, which warns that pride precedes a fall. He sees Israel not just as weak, but as insignificant, something he can literally rub out of existence.
Ironically, Ahab's reply in verse 11 is this moment of pure, surprising wisdom.
It really is.
Let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as he that putteth it off. That's a truly famous and insightful proverb. What is he communicating to Ben-hadad here?
It's profound caution against premature celebration. To gird on his harness means to put on your armor and get ready for battle. To put it off means the fight is over and you've returned safely.
So he's saying.
Ahab is reminding Ben-hadad, you haven't won yet. You are standing here drunk and boasting about the dust of my city, but you haven't even engaged in the fight.
It's a reminder that courage and fate are determined in the battle itself.
Exactly, not in the pre-fight rally. For Ahab, a man known for his folly, this one moment of clarity stands out so starkly, it's almost as if the prophetic spirit momentarily touched him.
And the scene concludes in verse 12 with a classic example of how military arrogance leads to strategic failure. Ben-hadad, drunk with his allied kings in their field shelters, just arrogantly orders the assault.
They are literally intoxicated by their own perceived power.
That detail seems important.
This intoxication is a key detail. They are holding a celebratory feast before the battle has even begun. This shows moral failure, strategic negligence, and psychological vulnerability.
A drunk general is not a good general.
No. A general who is drunk and celebrating with his 32 vassal kings has his focus completely divided. They have underestimated their opponent so thoroughly that they are not prepared for a counterattack.
Which just makes the subsequent divine intervention all the more devastating.
And effective. They confuse overwhelming numerical superiority with guaranteed victory.
And that sets the stage perfectly for this dramatic, immediate theological turnaround. Just as Ben-hadad orders the assault in verse 13, a lone, unnamed prophet appears to Ahab.
Just appears. Out of nowhere.
We have to linger on this moment. God initiates mercy without Ahab showing any signs of repentance or contrition or even asking for help. This is pure, unsolicited grace.
It's one of the most powerful displays of divine patience in Scripture. God is not acting because Ahab is worthy. God is acting for his own name's sake.
And for the people.
And for the sake of the people of Israel who are about to be destroyed. The prophet promises victory over this overwhelming great multitude. And the motive is again declared. Thou shalt know that I am the Lord.
So the victory is a lesson.
It's a spiritual education offered by God, attempting to draw Ahab to relationship, demonstrating that divine power transcends the geopolitical realities Ben-hadad relies on. It's God pursuing the wayward heart, relentlessly knocking.
When the prophet makes this promise, Ahab's immediate question, which is so telling in verse 14, is highly pragmatic. By whom?
Yeah, he wants the logistics.
He's not asking, what must I do to secure this divine favor? He's asking, which group of people do I deploy?
And God's answer, delivered through the prophet in verses 14 and 15, is designed specifically to remove any possible human credit for the victory.
How so?
The logistics here are crucial for understanding the theology of the remnant. God chooses the weak to shame the strong. The victory will come through a small vanguard of 232 young men of the princes of the provinces, followed by only 7,000 available troops.
Let's just contextualize those numbers for a second.
Okay, against a coalition that fills the country with horses and chariots and 32 vassal kings. 7,232 total troops is. It's laughably inadequate.
It's nothing.
It confirms God's preference for using the small, the vulnerable, and the insufficient so that the divine hand is just undeniable.
And that focus on the 232 young men of the princes, the children of provincial leaders, that seems really intentional. Why them?
Because they represent a strategic and symbolic choice. These are not Israel's seasoned veterans. They are the next generation.
A B team, maybe.
Perhaps less experienced, but representing the future of the nation's leadership. By placing them first, God guarantees that the initial breakthrough is accomplished by a seemingly weak, politically sensitive group.
It's a direct message to Ahab.
A direct message to Ahab and the elders. Your political and military might are bypassed. The victory rests on divine intervention, channeled through the most unlikely, vulnerable instruments. It highlights that success is by grace, not human preparation or strength.
And the execution of the surprise attack described in verse 16, it relies completely on that Syrian hubris we talked about.
It does.
The small Israelite force attacks at noon, an unconventional time, often a time for rest, while Ben-hadad and the 32 kings are busy at serious drinking.
This is a perfect example of how arrogance is its own undoing. They were resting and celebrating in their shelters, completely oblivious. They had already declared victory.
So when the force is detected,
Ben-hadad's response in verse 18 is just contemptuous. Capture them alive, whether they come for peace or for war. He doesn't even categorize them as a fighting force.
he sees them as prisoner.
Mere prisoners to be rounded up. That contempt ensures his downfall. A vigilant commander would have assessed the threat. Ben-hadad simply orders an abduction.
And the resulting rout, verses 19 through 21, is swift and absolute.
It is.
The young commandos rush out. The small army hits hard in hand-to-hand combat, slaying everyone his man. This coordinated precision, empowered by God, creates instant, contagious panic.
The phrase, everyone his man, suggests a sudden, localized, devastating effectiveness. The Syrian coalition, vast but disorganized by drunkenness and arrogance, just scatters instantly. Their sheer numbers become a liability.
And Ben-hadad, the great boaster,
He flees shamefully on horseback, abandoning his entire operation. This dramatic reversal is orchestrated entirely to establish Yahweh's authority.
And Ahab, for his part, he follows through. He achieves a great slaughter, destroying the superior Syrian horses and chariots. This is a moment of absolute complete obedience from him.
But only in the tactical sense.
Right.
He has obeyed the part of the command that leads to immediate success and self-preservation. This victory must have been profoundly encouraging for the Israelite people, proving the God of Israel was still fighting for them despite their king's idolatry.
But the narrative doesn't stop with the rout. We see the prophetic pattern continuing in verse 22.
The prophet returns immediately.
Providing essential foreknowledge and preparation time. Go, strengthen thyself. For at the return of the year, the king of Aram will be back in force. God gives Ahab a whole year to prepare.
Which showcases continued grace and guidance. I mean, why this advance notice?
Yeah.
Why not just destroy Ben-hadad right then and there?
I think this is a crucial point about divine instruction. God combines the miraculous with the pragmatic. He provides the victory, but he demands human prudence and preparation for the future. He's still testing Ahab.
Will he use this year to truly seek repentance and turn from idolatry, or will he just use it to rebuild his army?
Exactly. The fact that God gives him preparation time underscores that he respects the strategic reality of warfare, but he wants Ahab to merge that reality with reliance on divine guidance.
Now, this is where the theological stakes truly rise. We have to examine how the Syrians process their defeat in verses 23 through 25. Their advisors analyze the loss, but they filter it through a disastrous, flawed pagan lens.
They say, their God is a God of the mountains, therefore they were stronger than we.
Which reflects the cultural reality of ancient Near Eastern geotheology.
Let's spend some time on this concept, geotheology, because it's critical for modern understanding. What exactly did the Syrians believe?
They believed that deities were limited by territory, climate, or terrain. They saw Yahweh as a localized, regional deity, maybe connected to the high places or the hills around Samaria.
Which makes sense given where the first battle was.
It does. Their own gods, like Hadad, the storm god, were sometimes associated with specific natural phenomena, but they were generally limited in scope. In their worldview, if you move the conflict to a different environment, you change the operational jurisdiction of the enemy god.
So it's like saying we can beat the mountain champion if we lure him down to the plains where our strengths are maximized.
Precisely. So their solution is militarily sound, but theologically ignorant. They conclude they can beat Israel if they simply change the location and improve their command structure. Their reform is twofold. Replace the ineffective vassal kings with seasoned officers to address the drunkenness and fight on the plains, which is ideal for their chariots.
And they rebuild the army, horse for horse, chariot for chariot.
Trusting completely in this new, geographically sensitive strategy.
So this raises an important question for us. Why does God permit the enemy to regroup, analyze, and prepare? It seems like he's giving them a second chance to defeat Israel.
Because he intends to dismantle their false theology completely. The first victory established that Yahweh is powerful. The second must establish that Yahweh is universally sovereign. He is making a point that extends far beyond the battle lines.
True to the prophecy, Ben-hadad returns. He takes his massive, rebuilt army to Aphek in the Plains region.
As described in verse 26.
And the visual contrast described in verse 27 is absolutely staggering. It's designed to maximize the miraculous nature of the second deliverance.
The imagery is so stark and memorable. Israel's army looks like two little flocks of kids.
Small, vulnerable.
Easily isolated, like two tiny groups of goats. Meanwhile, the Syrians filled the country, just overwhelming the landscape.
Yes.
By all human metrics, Israel is facing certain annihilation.
Even more so than the first time.
Yes, because the Syrians have learned their tactical lesson and chosen their optimal terrain.
And this vulnerability is precisely what God uses to maximize his revelation. In verse 28, a man of God, another prophet, appears. But this time, he directly addresses the Syrian insult. He goes straight to the theological core.
This is the centerpiece of the entire chapter, the key theological principle of universal sovereignty. Because the Syrians have said, the Lord is God of the hills, but he is not God of the valleys. Therefore will I deliver all this great multitude into thine hand.
Wow.
God is acting to vindicate his name and destroy the pagan concept of limited divinity. He is declaring that he is Lord over all creation, hills and valleys alike.
The lesson for us is so immediate. God is not confined to the comfortable spaces where we choose to worship him, like our hills.
Exactly.
He is equally powerful and present in our secular lives, our valleys, our business dealings, our politics, our daily struggles. The battle is joined not just for territory, but for theological truth.
And the ensuing battle in verses 29 and 30 it's catastrophic.
The armies face off for 7 days, a symbolic time.
On the seventh day, battle is joined. Israel slays an unprecedented 100,000 Syrian footmen in one day. But the divine judgment extends beyond the battlefield, removing any doubt.
The rest of the Syrians flee to the fortified city of Aphek.
Only to have the city wall fall on 27,000 of the survivors.
27,000 men crushed by a collapsing wall. That is not standard military success. That is divine intervention.
Absolutely. Whether it was structural failure or a localized earthquake, this act confirms God's absolute, inescapable power. Even a fortified city, the ultimate sign of human defense, cannot protect them.
And Ben-hadad, the king who earlier boasted there wouldn't be enough dust left in Samaria.
He's reduced to a pathetic figure. He flees and hides in an inner chamber, the most secret safe space he can find. The contrast between his pre-battle arrogance and his post-battle shame is immense. It completely fulfills Ahab's earlier proverb.
So the reversal of power is now complete. The great Aramean king is hiding in a closet.
Pretty much.
Verses 31 and 32 detail Ben-hadad's servants' desperate plea for mercy. They advise appealing to Israel's reputation as merciful kings.
The ritual itself speaks volumes. They approach Ahab wearing sackcloth, a sign of mourning, misery, and utter despair, and critically, with ropes upon their heads.
The ropes. What did that signify?
The ropes signified total submission and readiness for immediate execution. They were signaling, "We submit to your absolute authority. We know we are worthy of death."
It was shrewd negotiation.
It was, from a position of ultimate weakness. They were relying on Ahab's vanity and political ambition, knowing that if he shows mercy, it will elevate his status among regional powers.
And Ahab falls for it instantly. In a shocking display of misplaced grace, or maybe political opportunism, he responds to the news that Ben-hadad is alive by saying, "Is he yet alive? He is my brother."
And that is the moment of fatal compromise.
The use of the word brother.
The servants seize upon that term immediately. They recognize the profound cultural and diplomatic weight of calling a defeated enemy king your brother. It elevates Ben-hadad from a prisoner condemned to destruction to an equal, a covenant partner.
This is Ahab's fatal flaw.
Detailed in verses 33 and 34. Ahab invites Ben-hadad into his chariot, a profound gesture of honor and restored equality, and secures a treaty based entirely on pragmatic political and economic terms.
The terms were the restoration of cities and granting commercial streets or trading districts in Damascus.
Yeah.
So he's prioritizing political expediency, trade advantage, and regional reputation.
Exactly. He treats this war, which was orchestrated by God specifically to settle a theological score and destroy pagan power, as a mere squabble over real estate and trade routes. He completely misses the divine mandate.
And what was that mandate?
The Lord had delivered Ben-hadad into Ahab's hand for utter destruction, a violation of the Aram mandate.
Let's elaborate on Aram. What exactly does that mean?
The Aram mandate, often translated as devotion to destruction or utterly destroy, was in place for specific enemies of God who represented existential spiritual threats to Israel.
Like Ben-hadad.
Ben-hadad represented pagan arrogance, geotheological blasphemy, and the oppressive power of the world system. When God delivers an enemy like that into the hands of his people, the only appropriate response is total, uncompromising eradication.
To ensure they can't contaminate or attack in the future.
Precisely. By sparing him, Ahab prioritized political stability and economic gain, those trade routes in Damascus, over executing God's clear spiritual judgment. He enters into a covenant with the very enemy God had condemned.
Which guarantees future conflict. Psychologically, Ahab's willingness to say, "my brother," reveals a profound spiritual disconnect.
Yes, he values human affirmation and diplomacy over the prophetic word. He essentially exchanges God's glory and Israel's spiritual purity for a few trade concessions.
He demonstrates selective obedience.
Perfect way to put it. He obeyed the instructions that led to military victory, but he refused the instruction that required him to sacrifice his own political ambition. This is the definition of a divided heart, capable of faith, but incapable of submission.
And God immediately intervenes to expose this failure through a dramatic object lesson beginning in verse 35.
A prophet from the sons of the prophets enacts this parable to confront Ahab. He first commands a neighbor to strike and wound him in the word of the Lord.
This first part is so strange and vital.
It is. It establishes the ultimate seriousness of a direct prophetic command. The neighbor's refusal to strike the prophet results in immediate severe judgment, death by lion for disobedience. This shocks the listener and establishes for Ahab that human compassion cannot override divine obedience. The prophetic word, even when it seems unusual or painful, is absolute law.
So the second man obeys.
He does, inflicting the necessary wound, allowing the prophet to appear as a soldier wounded in battle.
And the prophet, disguised, confronts the king with a carefully constructed story to trap him.
describes verses 39 and 40. He tells Ahab about being entrusted with a high-value prisoner who escaped because the guard was busy here and there. The penalty for losing the prisoner was clear. Thy life shall be for his life.
That phrase, busy here and there, is a timeless, chilling commentary on spiritual negligence.
It's the perfect excuse for distraction and misplaced priorities. The guard wasn't intentionally malicious. He was just preoccupied with minor secondary duties. He let the critical primary tasks slip away.
And this allegorically refers to Ahab's political activities.
His economic focus, which made him forget the core mandate of God's judgment.
And Ahab, judging impartially, pronounces the soldier's verdict. So shall thy judgment be, thyself hast decided it.
He judges himself.
He walks right into the trap.
The climax arrives in verses 41 through 43. The prophet removes his disguise, reveals his identity, and delivers God's devastating verdict, connecting Ahab's judgment precisely to the judgment he just passed.
And the pronouncement is severe. Because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction, therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people.
This isn't just about Ahab. The consequence extends to the entire nation.
Explain the significance of that substitutionary element.
It underscores the severity of violating the Aram mandate. When God declares utter destruction on an enemy, that judgment must be carried out. If the one commanded to do it refuses, he essentially steps into the place of the condemned.
So Ahab, by compromising with Ben-hadad,
he absorbed Ben-hadad's inevitable future judgment. His life and his people's security became forfeit to satisfy the requirements of divine justice. The treaty was a political gain, but the cost was their lives.
And Ahab's final action in the chapter just confirms his deep-seated spiritual resistance. He goes home heavy and displeased.
Sullen, angry, resentful of the correction, rather than sorrowful for his sin. He felt the sting of the warning, but he lacked genuine remorse, cementing his fate.
He walked away from 2 miraculous deliverances and 3 prophetic warnings, still fundamentally resistant to God's authority.
So let's synthesize the complexity of Ahab. He is the quintessential divided person, capable of great action when it serves him, but incapable of true submission.
Emotionally, he swings wildly, from paralyzing fear to unexpected courage, and then to this sullen self-pity when he's corrected.
He's driven entirely by external circumstances and the need for human affirmation, that my brother diplomacy.
Theologically, the relentless grace God showed him is monumental.
It is. 3 separate prophetic interventions, 2 overwhelming military victories, a whole year of prep time. God was continuously knocking on his heart through evidence and direct instruction.
But that patience isn't infinite.
No, it demands a responsive submission.
And we also have to analyze Ben-hadad as this enduring enemy.
He's defined by arrogance, strategic negligence, the drunkenness, theological ignorance, and ultimately worldly cunning with that shrewd negotiation.
He's a foil for God's universal power.
He is. But allegorically, he represents a powerful spiritual truth for us today.
How so?
Ben-hadad serves as a type of the oppressive sin, the worldly enemy, or the spiritual strongman in our lives that God has definitively delivered into our hands for destruction.
And Ahab's treaty, the compromise.
It ensures the enemy will return. When God gives us victory over a destructive habit, a pattern of sin, compromise is lethal. Sparing Ben-hadad meant he would become a spiritual liability, ensuring Israel's future peril.
Which brings us back to that critical theological debate. Hills versus valleys, how does this challenge apply to believers today in terms of mind renewal?
This is paramount. The fundamental mind renewal lesson is recognizing that God is not confined to our spiritual hills, our times of worship or church service.
Our comfortable devotion.
Exactly. He is equally present and sovereign in your secular valleys. Your Monday morning office, your complex family negotiations, your financial decisions, and your moments of deepest struggle. If we limit God's authority to only the spiritual aspects of our lives, we are committing the same geotheological error as the Syrians.
True belief means recognizing God's absolute lordship over all terrain.
All spheres of life.
And we can't overlook the unseen, behind-the-scenes spiritual battles. The physical conflict masked a battle over God's reputation among the nations.
Yahweh versus Hadad and the entire pagan system, and a contestation for the very heart of Ahab.
And the divine orchestration. The victory through the small remnant, the supernatural wall collapse.
The immediate judgment on the disobedient prophet's neighbor, all of it underscores that invisible spiritual forces and divine governance are directing the narrative. It reminds us of Ephesians 6.1, Drew. Our struggles often transcend mere flesh and blood.
So what are the actionable behavioral lessons for you, the listener, today? For the individual, the story is a profound warning against selective obedience.
Do not make peace, a compromise treaty with the Ben-hadad in your own life.
The sin, the bitterness.
The destructive habit that God has sentenced to destruction, don't compromise for the sake of short-term comfort or convenience. That compromise inevitably invites future, greater peril. You have to apply the Aram mandate to the things God has delivered you from.
And the prophet's excuse, I got busy doing one thing after another, that hits far too close to home.
It's the excuse for spiritual failure due to distraction. We are busy with our secondary concerns, our here and there, and we lose the high-value prisoner, the mandate of full obedience.
This lesson extends to family and community, too.
It does. Choosing the easier political peace over upholding moral and spiritual boundaries, just like Ahab's treaty, risks long-term peril for the entire household. It's reflected in the judgment, thy people for his people.
On a national or cultural level, the warning is starkly clear for leaders who prioritize expediency.
Alliances and policies that contravene fundamental moral truths, like Ahab's decision, inevitably invite future, greater peril and judgment. God holds all leaders accountable to his ultimate standards, not just political viability.
And finally, this chapter provides profound encouragement for all believers.
It does. God uses flawed people, Ahab, and weak instruments, those 232 young men. Victory comes by grace, not human strength. The encouragement is found in God's patient pursuit.
But the mind renewal lesson is critical.
Partial obedience is still disobedience. We must cultivate a heart sensitive to correction, ready to repent, and committed to full, not selective, submission to God's authority in every area of our lives, hills and valleys alike.
So what does this all mean? 1 Kings 20 is the ultimate warning. God's grace is boundless, and he provides undeniable evidence of his power. But that grace demands a response of full obedience, not sullen compromise.
Ahab won 2 massive military battles against impossible odds, but he lost the ultimate spiritual war because he failed the final test of accountability. He chose a political trade deal over a prophetic mandate.
The greatest enduring lesson, then, is this universal sovereignty.
God is the God of the hills and the valleys. He is present and sovereign in your greatest triumphs and your deepest struggles. Do not try to limit him to your comfortable terrain or your preferred areas of obedience. Trust his authority completely.
Knowing that the most dangerous compromises are made when we believe we know a better way
Than the one he has commanded.
So if Ahab, after witnessing such overwhelming, undeniable proof of Yahweh's universal power, the 2 routes, the collapsing wall, the prophetic precision, if he still chose political diplomacy over prophecy, what personal Ben-hadads in your own life are you clinging to?
That's the question.
What compromises have you made with sins God has clearly sentenced to destruction, believing you can secure a better deal for yourself, a little more comfort, a little more affirmation, a little more expediency than the one God has already given you? We leave you with that thought to mull over. Go explore the implications of full obedience.